Beams and columns now have cover fills for display in floor plan, which they never had before. The thing to remember is that the height will affect the display of the cover fill. So if your beams are above the floor plan cutting plane, you can have the cover fill turned on but you still won't see it. So the beams actually have to be below the cutting plane to see the fill. The fill is adjustable, so if I select this beam here and go into the settings here, you can see there's a new section here for cover fill, and you can choose whichever fill type you like, whatever pen colours that you want, and they will blend automatically, as in if you look at these in 3D, this set of beams, all of these beams are at the same level, so they're all the same height, position, size in 3D, but each beam can have its own separate cover fills. If the cover fills are the same, they blend together. If not, one will dominate the other, and that's simply controlled by the display order. So I can send this beam to the back and it will now be behind the green beam. So you can send beams forward and backwards if they're all the same level. If they're at different levels, like this one here, so this beam along the back here is above all of the other beams, this beam along the front is below all of the other beams, and then these ones in the middle are staggered half above, half below. You can see that if the beams don't touch, you'll get solid lines where the beams don't clash with each other. Where the beams actually do touch each other, the lines will be missing, but you won't see, for instance, like this beam here is above the other beam, you won't actually see that line, and the display order will not change the effect of that line. So I can bring this forward in display order. It will now change the fill so that it's above this one, but there is no physical line there, unfortunately. The only time, as I say, you get a line is when the beams physically do not touch each other, and then you'll see that as soon as two beams touch each other in 3D, the edge lines, the contour lines will disappear, regardless of whether one beam is above the other or not. But you can still use display order to bring different fills forward. Another thing you can do with the fill is they've got a section for the cover fill that's called 3D distortion. So in the case of this, I've got two beams, which if I can show you in 3D, one beam is horizontal, the other beam is sloping. So you can see exactly what's happening here. If you look at them from a top-down view, you'll see that it's got the same fill pattern on the top surface as this beam here, but because it's sloping, the fill pattern seems to be condensed. And that's exactly what happens in plan when you use this 3D distortion. The fill pattern will basically be condensed. It distorts with the inclination of the beam. Not a big thing, just something that you might make use of when you're modelling beams. You now have the cover fill, which we never had before. Another thing you can do with slabs is there's a new model view option. So if I go into model view options for the beam, the section for beams, so in the construction element options for the beams, we still have this used to be called entire beam before, it's now just called contour and axis. So we can have both the outside contour line and the axis line. We can have the axis line only, or we can have the contour line only. So you can see, as I flick through these, you'll see the difference in the beam. So contour lines, axis, or contour and axis. There's a new option that says here hidden line under slab. So what that means is if this beam actually goes below a slab, it will become a hidden line. If I turn that off, you see it's just a regular beam, but as soon as I turn that on, if there's a slab above this beam, then the portion of the beam that is below the slab will become a hidden line type. And you can see that here. Now, it doesn't affect slabs on different stories. So if you look at this here, if I show you this in 3D, I'll zoom to extents, what I've got here is a slab below the beams, a slab above the beam, but this slab is in the story above. So when I go to my floor plan, you can see that these beams are above this slab, so I expect to see the beams as solid, which I'm seeing here. This slab is above the beams, but you can see it's not affecting the beam lines because it's in a different story. Whereas If the slab is in the same story, so if I look at this in 3D, you can see that this slab is sitting above the two beams there. Because that's above the two beams and I've got that option turned on in the model view options, this part of the beam is now hidden. And it's completely live, so if I move this slab across, you can see it automatically trims and hides. So it's completely live, but the trick is the slab and the beam have to be in the same story for that to work. There is a completely new tool called the opening tool. It is quite similar to an empty door or window opening. It does basically the same thing. It cuts a hole in the wall. But the great thing about it is it can be associated to multiple elements at the same time. It can also be associated to different elements. So not only can we cut walls, but we can also cut beams, slabs, meshes. It doesn't cut everything, so it won't cut a column, it won't cut a roof, and it won't cut a morph. But effectively, what it does is, as I say, similar to a door or window opening, in that we can assign an opening to an element and it can pass through multiple elements at the same time. So you can see here it's passing through this wall, going through this wall, cutting through the beam. It won't unfortunately cut a column, and it's then going through the slab and it's going through the mesh. There's an option up here in your on-screen display options. There's an option here to show the opening cutting bodies, and you can see an image of where that cutting body is. So it's a combination between an opening and a solid element operation. So the opening belongs to one of these elements. In this case, I think it belongs to the slab, but I can then associate it to multiple elements that will cut through. It can be repositioned, it can be rotated, it can be changed in size, and it will adjust accordingly if it's cutting something. It can only be round or rectangular, so you cannot have polygon shaped openings at this stage. Round or rectangular and oval, and you'll see some further settings as I explain it. I won't explain all the details of it, just go through it briefly, but that's the sort of thing that it can do. It can be a full opening through, it can be just a little niche, so you can actually control the depth of the opening as well as the size of it, so it's quite good. The thing to watch is that, as it says here, make sure you're not using legacy mode, which we shouldn't be using any legacy modes, but any of the old jobs that from pre-version 16, if they're set to use legacy options, the opening won't work at all because it's not designed to work in anything that's using legacy mode. Now, as I say, I won't go through all the details, but with the openings, it is possible to have a 2D display as well. So whether you're cutting a wall or a slab, it doesn't matter. Now this blue line here again is the opening extents, or the, as I say here, it's the opening cutting body, so you can turn that on or off to suit. It won't print, it's like a roof reference line if you like, it's invisible, so it doesn't print at all, but it just allows you to see it. There's effectively, when you select an opening, so if I choose one of these openings here, there's a few settings to just look out for. The first one is the orientation, so it can be perpendicular to the element, so whether it be a slab, a wall, if it's an inclined wall, it will be perpendicular to that inclination of the wall. If it's a vertical wall, it will be perpendicular to the vertical inclination. It can be a vertical opening, so no matter what element you put it in, it will be vertical, and it can also be horizontal, and it can also have a custom angle. I'll show you the effects of this in just a moment. As I say, it can only be rectangular or round. There's your sizes, and like with other things, you can either lock the sizes to be proportional if you want to or not. This is the height above your story, and like with beams and columns, it has an anchor point, so you can choose whether you're positioning the center of the opening or the top edge, or you might want to align the very top left edge with something. So you can choose the anchor point that you want to use when positioning the opening. Your floor plan sections, this is where you control the pen colours and the line types that it has, and we can also control a 2D symbol here, which you can't set through here, but if we go into the settings, there will be a section in here called 2D symbol, and we can choose to have any type of preset 2D image to represent that opening. So it can be an empty opening if you like, or we can actually place an image opening in it. So if I choose that one, for example, here, you can see now I've got that bow tie type symbol to represent it. So it can be what you like. You can also have what they call an unlimited or infinite opening. Just means that it continues on both sides. So even though when I turn the cutting bodies on, even though it's infinite, it's only showing it to a certain extent. It only shows about a metre beyond that element, but it is in fact infinite. It is going further out. So if I was to attach it to this wall here, I can then, even though it doesn't go down to this wall, I can quite easily tell it to attach to this wall as well, which you'll see in just a moment how easy it is to do. And then the infinite opening will extend a metre beyond this wall as well. But so you can have infinite, you can have what they call a limited one side, in which case is your niche, so it can just cut half the thickness of the wall if we want to. And it can also be limited both sides, which is basically like I guess a double niche if you like, in the fact that it can be completely within an element and cut a void inside a slab or inside a wall. So it has a length if you like, and you can position that central point inside a wall or inside a slab and have it cut just a void inside that opening, which we'll again see in a moment. And if you're choosing the lengths, if you're choosing infinite lengths and stuff, that's where you set the lengths. And this is all stretchy in plan as well, or in 3D as well. So you can set these infinite or semi-infinite lengths, and you can adjust the lengths to suit and quite easily control it. And it's possible to also flip the length. So when you've got a single limited depth opening, you can also flip it so that it effectively will work the other way around and cut the niche on the other side. Here's a simple example. I've got some slabs here. I've got an opening, but I'll just go and get a new opening, which happens to be square 600 by 600. And if I just place that there, for example, I've placed it on that slab and it knows it's actually the top slab there that it will associate to. So if we look at this in 3D, you can see exactly that's what it's done. So it's gone into that slab. So it's an infinite depth opening at the moment, but as I say, it only shows down a metre, but it is infinite, and at the moment it can only associate to that one element because that's what I clicked on in plan. I can just as easily place an opening in 3D, and you can see here, depending which slab that I choose, it will actually lock to that particular slab. So you can see here that it's associated to that slab. It's infinite again, but it's at the moment not cutting that slab because it can only cut one element at a time. But it's very easy to select that opening, and this is where the solid element operation part of it comes in. You have this grip, they call it, the grip here, and it's telling me that this is cutting this slab, ID number 18. It's pinned to that slab, so it actually belongs to that slab. I can hit the cross button here, the delete, and it will delete it completely, or I can press the add button and I can say I want to add this slab. So all I've got to do is just highlight that slab and add it, and you can see exactly that's what it's done. It's now added that slab as a whole. Again, I can just say add, and then I can go to the next slab and add that slab. I can add this slab in as well, but obviously it's not cutting anything, so nothing will happen. I can select now, say this hole here, and I can go to the same grip and I can say add. I don't want this one, I don't want this one, but I do want that one. So you can see you don't have to have consecutive slabs, walls, whatever. The hole can miss some and go through others. So it's what you want to associate it to. and I can see that it's pinned to that slab, and as I highlight that you can see that the slab highlights. As I put my mouse on this entry here, the slab will highlight to show that it's there, and the pin means that it's pinned to that slab. I can also then swap it to, if I want to, I can pin it to the other slab. It can only belong to one element at a time, and you can see the bold outline, so it's now associated to this slab. And what that means is if I move this slab, and I move this slab just across a little bit, the openings associated to that slab also move. So because the opening is associated to this slab, whatever I do to this slab, it will affect the opening. So if I move the slab, it will move. If I delete the slab, it will delete the opening. However, if I was to move one of these slabs, for example this slab here, if I was to move that slab, the opening doesn't change at all because it's associated to the other slab down here, and its position won't alter. It still cuts. I can physically move this slab away. It's still cutting this slab. So it remembers the connection, but there's just nothing actually happening at the moment. So it's like a solid element operation. They've got to be in the same proximity as each other for the actual cutting to occur. Just so you're aware, it is possible to create an opening that passes through multiple elements at one time, rather than having to place an opening in one element and then associate it to other elements. All you need to do is place an element that represents where the opening is that you want it to be. In this case, I've got a morph that I've placed in here. All I did actually was placing a simple column, but you need to be a little bit careful with things like columns and walls because they automatically trim. And if you look here, you can see that the slab is automatically trimming away the column. Therefore, there is no intersection. Therefore, the option that I'm about to show you for creating the hole isn't going to work because there's no column actually physically passing through that slab. It is, but it's being trimmed away by the slab, so it won't create an opening. So the trick is to use a column and then just simply convert it to a morph. The morph doesn't have that same automatic trimming. If I turn the floor slab layer off, you'll see exactly what I mean, in that the column is being cut by the floor. So that's what I mean. The column will no longer have an interaction when I go to create the opening. So all you need to do is place your element and ideally convert it to a morph that doesn't have any of this automatic trimming. Then all you have to do is right click and choose the connect option and say create openings from selection. That'll bring up a dialog box where you can choose an automatic shaped hole. So if this is round, it will create a round hole. If it was rectangular, it will create a rectangular hole. I can force it to be rectangular or I can force it to be round. In this case, I'm just going to say rectangular. I can provide an offset around that element, so it will create an offset of 100 mils. I can choose to keep the original elements, or I can choose to delete the original elements, in which case the morph will delete, leaving just the holes. I'll leave it just for now, just so you can see exactly what happens. Merging nearby openings. This is the distance between openings. So I've got this set to 1 meter here. These slabs are closer than 1 meter. This slab is more than 1 meter. And obviously this slab is not connected at all. So you'll see exactly what happens. The ones that are closer than 1 meter, this will merge into one opening. This will create a separate opening, and this won't create an opening at all. I want to keep the ID and properties from the original materials, that's not important. And I'd simply just say create opening. Now you can see what's happened is there's my opening. As I say, this is a separate opening because it's more than 1 meter distance. If I select this one, you can see both are selecting at the same time. In fact, the opening belongs to this slab and this one is just automatically associated, which I've shown you before. So it's pinned to this slab and it's associated to that slab. But this opening, because they are further than 1 meter apart, they won't merge. All I've got to do is create a larger figure there and they would have merged. And obviously there's nothing connecting here, so there's no opening. Just as an example, if I show you the same thing with the column that has got this automatic trimming happening here, if I use exactly the same settings and create an opening, no matter how many times I click it, nothing will happen because there's automatically a trim there between the slab and the column. There's physically no column there now to cut the slab away. As I mentioned before, you've got horizontal and vertical and custom angles. So here I've got a wall that is sloping, and you can see exactly what's happening. So I've got some openings that are perpendicular to that. So if you look in here, well, that one's actually a custom angle, but if we look at this one's actually perpendicular, so it's perpendicular to that angle. This one is vertical, we can see here that's a vertical opening. This one here is horizontal. These two at the end here are custom. This one at the end is not only custom, but it's also been rotated around its axis as well. So if we look at these, any of these, you can change them at any time. So this one, as I say, is vertical. I can change that to horizontal. I can take the horizontal one and I can change it to perpendicular. As I mentioned before, the openings can be resized. It's simply a case of stretching. You can stretch an individual side if you like. You can stretch the entire polygon, bigger or smaller. It cannot be a polygon, so we can't curve these edges or chamfer corners or anything like that. It's got to be a rectangle or an ellipse or circular shape. As I mentioned before, it's very easy to adjust the depth of an opening to create a niche. If I create an opening in this wall, you can see that at the moment I have it as an infinite opening. So if I select that, you can see that it's set to unlimited or infinite. To adjust this, I can change to a semi-infinite or a limited one side or a limited both sides opening, and then I can play with the figures here, or I can simply leave it as an infinite opening and just adjust the length of the axis line. Now if I adjust the front axis line here, I'm controlling the front surface of this opening, and if I adjust the other end of the opening, you'll see that what it does is it creates a niche, and it's literally pulling the back surface of the opening in. Automatically it will switch it to a limited one side opening and will adjust the figure to suit. As I'm stretching this, I can type in the figure that I want. So if I want exactly minus 250, I just simply type in minus 250, and that creates the niche for me. At any time I can swap back to an infinite opening. If I stretch this side here, again I can type in an exact figure if I want, but I'm affecting the front surface of that. Now once you have a limited one side or a limited both sides, this is where the flip can come into play. If I was to flip that opening, what will happen is the reference plane of that opening will stay exactly as it is, and the opening depth that I've just stretched will flip. So as I say, the reference plane stays there, and you can see now the opening depth has gone there. If I turn on the cutting bodies, you can see exactly what's happening now is the opening is physically, it's still attached to the wall with the reference plane, but my opening depth is now going outside of the wall rather than inside because I've flipped it from that side to this side. I can simply stretch this back, and it's this one here that I'm wanting to change, so all I have to do is stretch that back into the wall, and you can see I've recreated the opening. So it's quite easy to control visually, or you can set actual figures in here. Remember too that you can also have openings that are vertical. So if I force this opening to become vertical, I can attach it again to this wall here. Because I've placed it as an infinite opening, I can simply select that opening and pull in both ends, adjust the heights. So I now have a limited both sides niche, and I've now created this nice little curved alcove in the wall. So it's very easy to control the depth and size of the openings. Just one thing out of interest, when you do place an opening, the first one that I placed was the aligned or the perpendicular to the surface. If I was to place a horizontal on this surface of the wall, it's going to ask me two things. One is where was the original click, and then I can place it horizontal, so you can see if I look from the top view, I can actually spin this around in any direction that I want. So it's still horizontal, it just may be at an angle. So I can create a tube like that. So you can actually align the axis. So the first point you pick is the reference plane. The second point is the axis of the tube or the cutting body. Some other minor new features. One is that there's a model view option for hiding the edge lines of slabs. So we can now choose to either always have a line, eliminate the lines, or show them as hidden lines. I'll show you a little bit more clearly in the actual model view options. So now with slabs, we can either show the line, and you'll always, when you have two adjoining slabs, even if they're exactly the same height, exactly the same material, there'll always be a line. You can choose to eliminate that line. So if they're the same height, same material, the line will be eliminated, or you can use it as a hidden line and show it as a hidden line. So if I set that to eliminate all lines, you can see what's happening here. I have a bunch of slabs. These are all separate slabs, so this is actually a separate slab, that's a separate slab, etc. So they're all 5 separate slabs. Have a look at them in 3D and you'll see what is happening here. So there's a separate slab there, it's exactly the same height as that slab, so they're all the same heights except for this slab over here, which is a different height. So it's still touching, but you can see a slightly different height there. So same material, same height, same material, different height, and then different materials at the front here. And you can see what happens here is that that line has literally been eliminated. So again, it's just a model view option. So I can say eliminate the line, show all the lines, which is what we used to have. It will always show the line there. And if I can find my model view options again, we can say show it as a hidden line. So you can choose how you want it to display. But my hidden lines are set as dash short. So you have to have the hidden line for both set the same. I obviously didn't have my hidden line set, so in here you've got the section for outlines, hidden lines. If they're both set to dash lines, that's exactly what you'll see. If you have one set for a dashed line and one set for a slightly different line, let's see what happens. So if one is dashed medium, one will override the other. I'm not sure if display order will affect that. Yes, so display order will affect that as well. So whichever slab you bring to the front, that's the hidden line that you will see. Visualization, the Cine Render engine has been updated a little bit. It has some slightly better materials so that you can see the quality of the concrete material before and after, and the polished floorboards and things like that. Glass, the materials are much better. These are all now in the template in our catalogue, so they should be better than they were before. The label tool has got one new little feature to it, in that before we've always had labels where we can adjust the position of the box. So we can have it to the top of the box, we can have it to the center of the box, or we can have it to the bottom of the box, of the text box I'm referring to. So top, center, or bottom. But what we can do now is we can still do that, but it now has an option for a continuous line. So you can see we've got a continuous line across the top. I can change that to the center, and it will have a continuous line through the center, which makes no sense in this particular case with 3 lines of text. But in 2 lines of text, it would simply just go right through the middle. And we can also change that to the bottom, so it can have the continuous line across the bottom. which is something we couldn't do before. I think we had the bottom option. We didn't have the other two. Also, this is an object label, but if you're using auto text now has a new option as well, in that you still have the top, middle, bottom, and you can extend the line through. But we can also, with auto text now, we also have some anchors where we can lock to the, in this case it's just to the text box according to top, center, bottom, or we can lock to the top line. And if we lock to the top line, we can then say whether we're locking to the top of the top line. So you can see here it's not the top of the box, it's the top line of text. We can lock to the middle of that line of text, or we can lock to the bottom of that line of text. And we can also do the same for the bottom line of text. So again, we can lock to the top, the center, or the bottom of that line of text, depending on what we want to do. And that extends the line through. So that's the same as before, so we can extend the line through. I'm not sure, it's not available, as you can see here. If I say the center of the text, it will go through the top of the text, it just won't go through the center of the text, because it knows, obviously, you wouldn't want the line through the text. Whereas with this one here, it doesn't know whether you're doing 2 lines or 3 lines. So if I was connecting to the center, it doesn't recognize how many lines of text there are, it will just put the line through. The publisher palette has an option where you can now right click. So when you publish a file, you get this list of files that it's published, and it comes up saying save, save, saved. You can now right click on any of these and say show in File Explorer, and it will actually literally open up the File Explorer and show you that file. Again, sorry for the quality of this. This is just a screen grab that I've pasted into ArchiCAD, and it wasn't a very good quality. Railing geometry, if you're playing with railings and stuff, it now has 2 new offset options. One is to offset just a single side, so it will offset just one side, or as with a polygon, we can offset all sides, so all the sides of the railing will offset at the same time. This one here, a list of complex profiles, fixed an error in Windows where the profile names were truncated, which was simply that. Whenever you looked at a list of complex profiles, it got to a certain number of characters and then just cut it off. What you'll find now is when you go into here and we look at the complex profiles and we look at the list, you'll see that the name is now infinite. So if the name got longer, it would show a wider box here. So they're no longer truncated, which is nice. If you had complex profiles before and 2 parts of the complex profile may have been the same material, quite often you would end up with no joining line there, because it would think, okay, it has to blend the surfaces and it doesn't show the joining line. It will now show a joining line. Composites dialog box duplicate functionality has now been merged. So whereas before it used to have a duplicate button here, if you've got this wall type, this composite, and you wanted to duplicate it, it used to have a separate duplicate button. It's now hidden into the new, so you say new, and then you can choose to duplicate or not. So completely new, or you can duplicate the existing settings. The attribute manager, surfaces with missing textures are now indicated with a red texture icon. So in the attribute manager, if you do have a surface and it has a missing texture, the icon will be red. So you'll see that, and it will actually say that it's missing in brackets there. Shouldn't happen very often, but it makes it easier for you to spot any problems now. The attribute manager, when you're transferring layer combinations, it now has the ability back where we can include all the layers. So we've got the layer combinations here. We can transfer the layer combinations from one job into another file, or from another file back into this file. Before version 22, we used to be able to include all associated layers. For some reason, this option disappeared in version 22. It's back again. So they've put that back. So when you do the layer combinations, you can automatically include the layers that are included in those combinations, rather than having to select them separately. The work environment has a new search function added to it, so that when you're looking for things in the work environment, you can actually just go into the search. Probably not a big thing because you're probably not customizing the work environment very often, but if you are, you can actually just add a search in there and it will go and find the menu or the keyboard shortcut automatically for you. It'll give you a list of things that match that text that you've added there. The delete and replace improvements, when you delete or replace a material, if it was going to result in missing attributes, it would give you a warning to say that, which it used to before, but now we can actually go and get more details. There's a button here that says show details in browser. So for example, I've got this wall here. If I was to select that, if I just go into the edit selected composites in here, so that's the wall that I've got selected there. If I was to delete it, you can see it's going to result in missing attributes because I'm deleting this composite. So this wall will still be there, but it will be missing the composite. So now what I can do is I can go into my details, which we could do before, but now I can actually say show the details in the browser. So you can see there's 21 elements are going to be missing and 55 favorites are going to be affected. I can show the details in the browser. It will open the browser up and it will literally list all of the elements that are in here. So it's giving me the element type, the ID, and where it was placed. So you get a bit more information about what is going to be affected rather than just a message to say that they will delete. So I don't want to actually do that, so I'll cancel that. And when you're using ArchiCAD dialog box to open a file, so if I was to go file open, basically what it's saying now is it will only show you the proper file types, the PLNs or PLAs. It will no longer show you backup plans. So when you go to open a file in here and you say open, and I go browsing into, in this case, my demo folder, you can see here it's got the PLN. It will not give me the backup plan. So no matter what I do, it doesn't have an option in here for backup plans at all. So you can't accidentally open the backup, which was something that did happen from time to time. The only way, well, I say you can't accidentally, you can't do it from here, but you can go into your file manager, go and find your folder. So if I look for that same demo folder, there's my PLN, there's my BPN. I can now right click and open that BPN, the backup file, and it will start a new ArchiCAD and open that file up. So that's the new features for 23. I'll do a separate video for the new features of 24.